is being recorded.
There we go. Good morning, everyone. Good morning to you, Lori. How are you?
Okay, first of all, I know everybody's going to agree with me. Can we all say welcome back, Lauren? And as we love Sadie, we miss you. When you're not here, the chat's not the same. Nothing is the same. So welcome back, Lauren, my partner in crime, as I always call her. She's back. So I'm happy to see you again.
Oh, I'm so happy to be back. I'm sad when I look at excited as well, but sad when I look at the recordings because I'm not there, but I'm excited to be back this morning.
We had an interesting discussion last week, and it was all about being etiquette, proper etiquette on Zoom, proper etiquette in meetings. And I really, it was a different topic, and I didn't quite know where it was going to go. And it turned out to be fascinating, and a lot of great gems were taken away from it. So it was really interesting.
That's awesome. That's always good to hear.
Oh, and you know what, Lauren, we need to make an announcement about next week so everybody knows that we're not going to be, because I didn't realize Thanksgiving is next week. So guys and frequent flyers, I decided to not have a show next week because I know you are going to be shopping, getting ready for Thanksgiving, traveling. It would be the Wednesday right before. So we're going to have what do they call it? A blackout day, I think they call it, next week, but we'll be back the following week. So I want to let everybody know that. So if you try to log in and we're gone, we're coming right back the following week. So with that, Lauren, I'll let you take it from there.
Okay, perfect. Let's do it. Give me a couple of seconds while I share my screen. It's a scary one, so hold on. There we go. Can you see my screen okay, Lori?
I can. Yep, I can.
Let's see. All right, there we are. So good morning, everyone. My name is Lauren Simpson. I am with the SBDC, or the Small Business Development Center. We are a national program with over 1,000 locations across the country, and we offer no-cost services to local small businesses. We're able to offer our services at no cost because your tax dollars have already taken care of our fees, so be sure to partake in our resources. So for the Los Angeles network, we have several locations represented on the map in front of you. We cover serve the Los Angeles, Santa Barbara, and Ventura counties. So if you are within those counties, please be sure to get in contact with one of our local offices. And you can see those offices, or centers as we refer to them. There are locations in Santa Clarita, Camarillo, Los Angeles area has several. We're over in Torrance, Long Beach, Laverne, Pasadena, you name it, we have got a center for you. Now, here's a deeper dive into what it is that we do. We offer no-cost business advising, and so you're able to meet one-on-one via Zoom for now with one of our business experts, and you may have the opportunity to sit with our guru of all numbers, Miss Lori Williams. We also have advisors and colleagues that are experts in the fields of marketing, business planning, licensing and permitting. If you're looking to take your work from being a handyman to construction, honestly, you name it, we've got it. And then we also offer virtual trainings, much like the training you have joined today. Be sure to get in contact with us today. If you'd like to reach us by phone, you can go to 866-588-7232. For those of you who would rather reach out to us via the email or the website, you can go to smallbizla.org/new client. Now, if you have been lucky enough to find us and you're outside of our service area, please go to americassbdc.org/find-your-SBDC. Let me stop that screen share. Lori, quick housekeeping. Let's make sure that we put all questions into the Q&A. Again, let's put the questions into the Q&A, and then we will reserve the chat for chatting. So if there's any comments or anything you want to share with us about the content you're reviewing, please throw it in there. If you have suggestions for any topics that you would like us to address in future shows, we're always open to that feedback. And then please review the chat for any helpful links and upcoming webinars that Lori will be hosting. Lori, I think I covered it. So with that, I'll hand it off to you.
You got it, Lauren. Thank you so much. And thank you so much for mentioning about putting any interested topics into the chat. I'm starting to schedule for next year, January, February, March. So any information or topics that you would like for me to cover, I know we're going to have Samara back for the HR. Remember, we had so many questions on that. So I'm going to have her come back, but anything of interest. And thank you to those who have reached out to me for a one-on-one. I think I've met with everybody that's reached out now. So that's wonderful as well. Quick announcement on some of the upcoming webinars that I'll be hosting. I have my financial literacy, as I mentioned on several of the programs. Session number 2 has become very popular. It's a basic Excel financial modeling on what is the least amount of information you need to know. I'll probably be repeating the series in February, not in January. So if you don't get the chance to take it now, please check it out in February, and you can take it in any order that you desire to do so. I'm also going to be offering my Should You Be Charging Customer Sales Tax webinar in December. Have a lot of confusion, especially people who are using Shopify. They may be believing incorrectly that it is handling the sales tax for them. So I will not only be talking about how to charge sales tax properly in the state of California, but I will also be discussing what you need to know about charging sales tax, or if you need to charge sales tax when you sell out of state. That's another big confusion that people do not know and understand. On the week after Thanksgiving, November 30th, we're going to have Ariel come back on, one of our favorites that comes on the show a bit. And my goal is to spend December kind of getting ready for next year, strategizing. So we're going to talk about a marketing strategy, what you need to consider, how you can prepare for next year, what thoughts you can have, assessments and auditing of your current marketing strategy that you're doing. And so that's going to be our last show for November before we start into December, which is always a crazy, crazy month, it seems. And I just saw a comment by Lily in the chat about nonprofit topics would be great, grants and funding. I just want to comment that we will have some announcements coming in January, February, somewhere in that time, about additional grants that are being offered. So that's a little tidbit. Now you're going to want to check in because you're going to want to find out what that's all about. Now, today's going to be an interesting show. And I'm going to say it's a long sought out one, because Barney, who you're going to meet in a bit, he's quite a busy man, and we've had a hard time getting him on the show because he's got so much going on, but he's a wealth of knowledge, and that's why I wanted to have Barney on the show today. He is a serial entrepreneur. He has spent the last 16 years launching, building, and managing for-profit, nonprofit, academic, and corporate business ventures. He is currently using his expertise as CEO of Gentefy. I'm going to probably said that wrong. We have to ask Barney to tell me how to say that properly. To develop new products and services that address underserved neighborhoods in order to increase entrepreneur activity and foster local economic empowerment. Real excited to have him talk about that. It's Boulevard Market. You've heard me mention it before. I'm not going to tell you any more. He's going to get into that. Barney holds a bachelor's degree in entrepreneurship from Cal State LA, a master's degree in entrepreneurship and innovation from USC, and has been trained in entrepreneurship methodology by the National Science Foundation's Innovation Corp. Barney has entrepreneurship written all over him, and he's going to share his expertise today. Welcome, Barney. Welcome to the show.
Thank you for having me over. I appreciate it. Thank you so much. I'm so excited. I'm like, this is like it's a great day. Thank you so much.
I've been, so everybody in the audience, Barney is like one of my favorites. He is also a colleague of mine at the Pasadena SBDC. Shout out to the Pasadena SBDC. And I just have to tell the audience this, Barney. So during the pandemic, we were on a team and it was named the Disaster Team. I'm not sure if I like that name so much. We laughed about it a lot. But Barney was on the team with just two other people, and we met every single week, sometimes more than that, to go over different things. And one of the things I have to say is I love seeing Barney because he smiled during everything. No matter how awful it was, I could count on a Barney smile. And he would have this picture with these glasses, and I named him Mr. Hollywood, right? Because he looked like Hollywood. So I'd be like, Hollywood's on the show today, and it was great to see you smiling. But Barney, you're going to just walk us through. I didn't want to take any information away, and you start where you want, but let's kind of get, you have entrepreneurship all over you. I want to go back before your bio, Barney. Where did you get so inspired to spend your career in entrepreneurship?
Yeah, I mean, my parents are immigrants, right? So they immigrated to this country from El Salvador. Immigration, people who immigrate is, it's the ultimate entrepreneurial endeavor, right? You're sort of taking what you have, what you know, and who you know, and trying to create value through this uncertain world and path, which is, crossing over and coming to the United States. And so my mother immigrated first, and then she was part of the wave, the Reagan amnesty wave. And so thankfully, because of that, she was able to live, she didn't have to live in the shadows, right? And so because of that, she was very much involved in, she had a job, but she also, like a lot of Latino families, had side hustles, had things that they did. My mother sold clothes on the weekends. She sold perfume, she sold whatever she could to kind of keep the family together. And so did my dad. My dad had side hustles. And so, from a very young age, I saw what entrepreneurship looked like in the form of hustle and the form of like making things happen with very limited resources. And so I just always was, it's just something we did. It wasn't like, oh, wow, I'm an entrepreneur, or it's just something that was, people did it. And, from as little as 9 years old, I would go with my dad to downtown Los Angeles and put beads together and sell them to tourists in Santa Monica Pier with him. And, fast forward to like high school, I would, when people would be selling chocolates to fundraise, I would be figuring out which classes and which times, and I would sell chocolate with, to try to make money. So there was always that inclining inside of me to sort of like make money on my own. I never really liked working for people. I used to sell like peanuts and lemonade at the Staples Center, not the Staples Center, at the Coliseum, at like the sports arena, like, Rose Bowl. I wasn't a formal job. I just did it on the side because I knew one of the guys who worked there. He would give me a box with like peanuts, and I would just go sell them like at 13 years old. So there was always stuff that I did. But I got that example from my parents 100% for sure.
Wow, I'm glad I asked that question because I didn't know that. And you and I you could tell I'm from the country when I say the same elk. I grew up in the country. I always tell our audience, they know all my background now from a show for over a year. But my grandparents were farmers, and everybody had their own little company, but we didn't even think they had a company. We just was like, well, Norm sells tires and Jim has a dairy farm. And I had to pick up beans from the time I was, I think 7 or 8, I was on the farm. And then I would go down to the farmer's market and I would sit on the back of the truck with my grandfather and I would yell out, beans $2, beans $2, and then I'd give the change. And my mother went to the farmer's market with baked goods, and we would sell the baked goods. And it was just a way. It was so funny because when the words entrepreneurship came about, I was like, what do you mean? Is this something different than just trying to make money and survive? That's where I came from, so I fully get it. So when you went into, what happened first? Did you start a company? Did you go to school? I started a company and then went to school. Let's blend that part of your life together.
Yeah, no, same. I mean, I was around 18 years old. And, I was just like most 18-year-olds at the time, was just like messing around, partying, and just doing, dumb stuff. And so I was about to go to the work at the YMCA. I was looking at a job, like I wanted to get a job just because I wanted to support my habit of going out. And so And so my mom, I didn't like asking my mom for money, and I was just one of those people. And so I, went to go apply. They told me how much money I could make. And then I had another friend named Jared who was in mortgage at the time and residential mortgage finance. And he was just like, he literally had this conversation with me. It was like, oh, this is how much you can make doing at the YMCA, and this is how much you can make doing, mortgages with me. He's like, what do you think? What would you like to do? And I was like, oh, I want this check, like, give me that check. And sure enough, like, I went to go work with him, and it was great. It was like, people make fun, like, they were talking about, it's like that, the Wolf of Wall Street moment. Like, you show me a check and I'll go work for you. Right? It kind of was like that in retrospect. I didn't think about it, but and within a week or two, I had opened my first deal. And like, my first month I had a $4,000 commission, and I was like 18 years old. And so I was like, oh, wow, I'm hooked. This is great.
Yeah.
And so, and that was such a great time because it was like it was a real estate boom at that time. And so we really I rode that wave. And that's kind of like, it was my first foray into entrepreneurship in a formalized way. I tried to build my own sort of like company within a company. I read books like The E-Myth Revisited, taught myself how to build systems. At one point I had my own little setup where I had, people working for me, and I had a system in place. I had everything systemized to a certain degree. We kind of modeled it after like a doctor's clinic, where I would just come and diagnose at the end and, give my recommendations. And so it worked really well. But it wasn't until after that, and then the market crashed like in 2008, right? That I was like, oh, wait a minute, maybe I should go to school. Because I was in school while this was all starting, but I had dropped out because I was like, well, I don't really need school. I'm doing really well. I'm making more money than anybody I know at the time. I was like, what do I need school for? When the market crashed, I was like, well, maybe maybe I should revisit this idea. And so sure enough, that's when I started back again from scratch. I went to community college, worked my way up, and then eventually transferred into Cal State Los Angeles, where I studied business. But the great thing was going to business school while you are running businesses, and that I was able to learn from business school a lot more than my average sort of colleague at school, because I was applying it in the real world. And so it was a really great time for me.
You know what's amazing to me, Barney? I always resonated with you, and I always thought we had some similarities. But now that I'm hearing your story, I have to go back on my own. So as you kind of came to the conclusion when you talked about the check from the mortgage, I remember this awful day tying cauliflower on a farm, and it was freezing. And I remember thinking, I want to get paid for what I know, not what I physically can do. Now, in the country where I grew up, I didn't know there was blue and white collar workers. That wasn't a word that I was even exposed to, but I suddenly saw that education was the key. And my mother kind of said, well, you can go for a, degree in biology or science, or become a lab tech, or you can work on a farm. And I was like, okay. And then I went to school and was like, I hate this, so I dropped out, started a company, and was like, no, I want to be a business person. Went back into business afterwards. And I love what you said about how being in business allowed you to apply what you were learning in school, because you had the experience. And I don't know whether this was true for you. I learned that many of the things in school I could apply. Some of the things in school didn't make sense to me. It was not what I saw in the real world. And the reason I'm saying this for the audience, Barney, is so many times, and you probably know this, entrepreneurs, I'm going to use the word get hung up on. They'll say, I didn't go to the business school, so I can't succeed. And I always tell them, no, there's fundamentals that if you even went to business school, you may miss the actual fundamentals and it may harm you. So I always try to tell people, although I'm a strong supporter of school, I mean, I've got degrees complete, but you don't have to have a business degree to succeed in entrepreneurship. You just need to make sure you learn somehow, some way, the business fundamentals. Your thoughts on that, Barney, from your experiences?
Yeah, I mean, I think we come from a society at a time where education was centralized at the university, right? And so like all the information was captured there and disseminated there. So it was like, it was important. Now, I am a big proponent of higher education, because what I think the biggest value of the university system, it wasn't even so much the business school, was for me was to figure out how to think, right?
Yeah.
They teach you how to think critically, how to even like analyze your own thinking, and question why you think the way you think and how you see the world, and giving you different perspective. And as you know, like when it comes to entrepreneurial thinking, it really is a mishmash of it's called associative thinking. So it's about like really jamming together as much different experiences and perspectives and surroundings and knowledge, and then coming up with your own interpretation of what that means. But you can only do that by teaching yourself and being surrounded by people who care about thinking differently or thinking critically. Now, when it comes to the tangible information about entrepreneurship and business, the truth of the matter is that we live in this decentralized world where knowledge is available everywhere. We're just talking about, you can take apart your car just by watching YouTube videos, right? Apparently. So the information is out there, right? In an abundant way. There's YouTube videos, there's websites, there's books. I mean, you name it, there's information that'll teach how to read there's the SBDC, there's workshops, there's how do you read a pro forma, how do you put together a P&L, how do you keep track of your bookkeeping through QuickBooks or SyncBooks or any other platform. There's so many opportunities for you to learn the tangible information of business, of running a business. And there's also mentors and advisors, right? So you can actually pull from people as well. You get way more knowledge, experience, and momentum by actually doing versus just studying, right? And there's so many people who stop at studying that they never do anything. And so they're constantly like thinking and never pulling the trigger. And so especially with entrepreneurship, when it's 80% pulling the trigger and then figuring out where the bullet went later, so it's like, that's kind of where what you have to do. And I'm a big proponent for education. I almost don't think, I don't know, I think I got to a place now where I don't even know if I'm supportive of like entrepreneurship as a major. But I definitely do see the value of education. In business, there's so much information out there. I think it's important for you to learn ancillary things. Like it would probably have been better for me to learn, economics or, engineering or something like that, and figure out how to apply it in business in a different way. I think that you get way more value that way.
You're so right on that. And a couple things, my first 2-year degree, like I said, was biology and science and research. And it turned out to be really a fundamental for a lot of my thought processes. And even like in a company situation, I always say you can't kill the host. You got to make choices. You can't kill the host. And what you're speaking about, thinking versus doing, I remember back in my 20s, I wrote this, that intelligence times action equals success. It was a bit of both. It was being action oriented as well as intelligent. And one of the things I love that you use, the words, is critical thinking, strategic thinking. This is one of my soapbox statements, Barney, where I feel as though we're not engaging in it enough. I feel like the generations behind me got so trained to just push buttons in an app to figure out how it performs instead of sitting back and thinking. So the subject I'd like to get your opinion or statements on is, I try to tell entrepreneurs that you really need to sit back and think critically and strategically and analyze. So often what happens is entrepreneurs, I feel, get sold a bit from Hollywood, that it's all emotion, and they think, well, it's my passion that's going to make me successful, right? And I was teaching at USC in the entrepreneurship program, and when I would ask the students on day one, what does it take to succeed in entrepreneurship, they would all stand up and they would be so proud to be able to tell me the answer, and they would scream, passion. That's what the other teachers were telling them. And I go, do you know what passion does? And they'd be wide-eyed. I go, what? I go, it gets your you-know-what out of bed in the morning. That's all it does. It is understanding the fundamentals of business. So any comments you have on entrepreneurs getting a little bit sideswiped and not focusing enough on fundamentals still grow businesses? Passion's good, but fundamentals grow businesses. Any concept on that?
I mean, I'm a big, first of all, I agree with you about the passion thing. I think it's overrated. I think I think if you're not finding passion in the mundane, then you're not passionate, because I think passion only gets you so far. Like this business kicks your ass. I mean, entrepreneurship beats you up on a regular basis, and so you lose passion a lot of times. And if you're relying on passion, it's not going to carry you through. I think what's more important is desire. Desire is intention. Desire is like, well, this is what I want, right? And this is what I desire in life, and this is how I make it happen. It doesn't depend on you being passionate about that thing, because trust me, I'll go. I can't speak for you. I know you like numbers. There's sometimes where I'll be like doing my bookkeeping or working with in a pro forma like we're working on now, and I'm just like, man, this is heavy, and I don't. It takes a lot of time. And trust me, my passion is not carrying me through that. Like, it's my desire to want to achieve on a high level and make an impact in my community. That is just not passionate work. But the fundamentals will carry you through that. But I think from a motivational factor, I think the desire and a vision carries you farther, in my opinion. The passion is so fleeting because it comes and goes. You can be I was passionate about cooking Neapolitan pizzas during COVID, and I made a ton of them. But 2 years later, I maybe made like 3 this year, and that's not that much. So passion is just like ebbs and flows, and I can't. My business depends on me being dedicated and committed to it, not being passionate about the work every day.
Yeah, and I have to say, I'm not sure if this is other people. I know it is for me. I think me wanting to be an entrepreneur, if we call it that way, my whole life was I like to be in control. I don't like to have other, it's so funny. I think it's a blessing and a curse. I don't like to be told what to do. Okay, it's maybe a good or bad part of my personality, and I like to be in control. And when I started early working for people, I had a company that went under. Not me, like I was just a little lowly employee, customer service person. The company went under, and then another one had other things. I was like, I remember thinking, well, if I'm going to end up we're in a bad situation, I'm going to at least know ahead of time. So I think for me, it was a little bit of control. Out of curiosity, do you think control, because you said you didn't like working for other people, do you think the need to be in control of your future feeds into it a bit for you as well?
Yeah, having worked for myself majority of my life, but also having worked for other people, because I worked for university. I ran their Center for Entrepreneurship at Cal State Los Angeles, and then I worked at Unilever, working with them on their innovation and new business models team. I think the thing about entrepreneurs, inherently, we're problem solvers, right?
Yeah.
And we see something, and we're like, I know how to fix that, or I want to fix that. And corporations and big companies don't necessarily. A lot of their philosophy is very like, hey, listen, it's not broken. Let's keep the boat moving. Or let's not deal with that. That's not really impacting the high level, or it's always something like that. And so I think for me, having experienced that, the problem that I found a lot of times was just like, I hated it. I didn't mind people telling me what to do, because I didn't feel like they were telling me what to do as much as we were aligning interests, and we're all working for the same goal. And so I never felt like I was being told what to do. I think what I don't like is, I don't know if I can't cuss here, so I'll just say, like, I don't like doing dumb stuff.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
So like, I saw a lot of dumb stuff happening.
Yeah.
And I was just like, well, I don't want to. I think that's dumb. Like, why are we doing that? That doesn't make sense. Let's do this. And and it just, sometimes that disaligns, but you still have to do it. And that to me is like, wow, that was like, I hated that. I hated that the most. You had to fight for everything too. Like, that's how I knew I wasn't meant for corporate innovation work at Unilever. And I was like, I had to leave, because we had I remember we were tasked to come up with new business models and come up with new ways to innovate. And we presented a slew of ideas that were all really disruptive. And they picked, the board and the CEO picked the least disruptive and least, it was incremental growth. It wasn't exponential growth. And so to me, I was like, oh, like, it's all theatrics. It's like, you just care about the next quarter. You don't care about like 2 years investment into this project or something, so it's like, I understood at that point that it wasn't so much that corporations don't want that stuff. It's just that they're not capable of it a lot of times. And I love to disrupt. I love to like do transformative work. And that's where I align more with. And the big corporations, big companies, and big universities, they're just okay with doing incremental, betterment. So that was the thing that really kind of sank it for me.
That's a really good point. I always say if I'm going to be alive, I'm going to be fully engaged.
Yeah.
Now, where I want to go next, Barney, and I know I probably said your company wrong. When I went to say it, I realized I never heard it spoken. I only read it. And so I was like suddenly realizing it. But there's so much to unpack here. You have Boulevard Market, which, like I was mentioning to you at the beginning when we were talking before the show went live, that Sylvia Garcia was on our show and talked about it. There was the incubator program that Sylvia went through. Then there's your company, and it's your community involvement. So wherever you want to start to tell that story, let's get the audience to have a full understanding of all the cool things that you've been doing in the last several years.
Yeah, so we started a company. It's pronounced Gentefy.
Oh, I never gonna get that right now.
Well, the keyword is gente, right? So it's like people. So it's a company that my wife and I started a while ago, back in I think it was 2013, 14 maybe. It was a response to what we saw was going on in Boyle Heights in their gentrification movement. So, we all know what the word gentrification is, when outside people come and invest in communities of color usually, and those people end up getting displaced because rents go up and all kinds of things happen in that nature. So what was happening in Boyle Heights was people from the local community were reinvesting their resources, their money, their creative energy back into the communities that they were from. And what was it doing? They were doing it responsibly and aligned with the cultural fabric of the community, so it felt authentic. And in the process was encouraging people to sort of around them to be creative and reinvest their money in there. And so since then, Boyle Heights really kind of took off, and the whole street is really doing well. And they really protect their neighborhood. So we felt, okay, well, how do we create a company that is the action verb of that? And so we took gentrification and we applied it to Gentefy. So Gentefy is essentially our company, and it's been doing great. We since then, since we started, we were initially just doing consulting work, and then we pivoted to okay, let's do physical activations. And so we looked at this site that the city of Montebello had. It was an empty lot at the time. It was downtown Montebello was in disarray when we sort of discovered the lot. It was in their downtown corridor off of Whittier Boulevard. A lot of empty storefronts and broken windows and graffiti everywhere. And the first thing we thought of was why can't we as a Latino community have nice things? Why can't we have things that we're proud of? And so, there's a lot of communities like this. And so we spent a lot of research trying to figure out, well, what can we do, or what was the real underlying problem? And so what we ended up discovering was that there's a lot of people aged 20 to 45 who were becoming upwardly mobile, going to school, getting educated, exposed to different TV shows and Travel Channel and traveling the world. And their tastes were evolving, and they were becoming more educated, more bougie, I guess you could say. And they were essentially looking at the communities that they were from, and what was there, the supply of small businesses and legacy companies were not matching up to their new palettes, right? And so a lot of people were leaving the communities that they were from and moving to West LA or downtown Los Angeles, and so they were taking all of their creative resources and geniuses and moving out of the neighborhood. And what that does is it leaves this massive gap in the community, for one, that is economic dollars and mobility, a genius that could be applied in the community. And so we thought, okay, well, how can we understand that and create an experience for individuals to not want to leave? And so we looked at this lot in the city. It was city owned, and we presented it to the city. They liked what we had to say. And fast forward, we did a lot of research and looked at models that made sense, and we developed this concept called Boulevard Market. And so Boulevard Market is a food hall, because that's how in my opinion, that's the fastest way to build communities, through food. And it's a food hall that houses 8 concepts, one of which is a bar called Alchemy Craft that we own as well. So we own the food hall. We also own a beer and wine bar called Alchemy Craft. Because the margins on beer and wine are really good, a lot better than real estate, and cash flows really well. And then we have an incubator. inside of Boulevard Market, which Sylvia and Los Tacaramucho are a part of. And so that incubator was the first of its kind in Los Angeles County. And so, it was the first time anybody had built an incubator where people would be in a shared kitchen and they could sell directly to the customer in a quick service restaurant capacity. And so all of that kind of like created this really interesting model, which we've launched last year officially. And it's been a year since we've been open. And it's been a wild hit, a really great success. And so now we're starting to develop more stuff. We're starting to look at what are the other models, expanding the bar. We won an RFP for another lot in Uptown Whittier that we're going to grow to our second location. So we're just starting to like pick up the momentum now and start doubling down on like what's next. The emphasis of our company is about investing in people, places, and programs that can essentially empower local creatives to stimulate the local economy and build entrepreneurial energy, right? And so I think that is kind of like the thesis of what we do. So every little venture that we decide to get into is going to have a component of that as well. I mean, we're even exploring the idea of looking at private equity on a small scale, and maybe even purchasing a lot of these businesses that are owned by legacy families that have no one to pass them on to, because there's a lot of boomers who are retiring and they have small businesses that they might be letting go and they don't know who to let it go to because maybe the family members don't want to take it over. And so, could we purchase a local, nail salon, or could we purchase a barbershop? Could we purchase, little businesses, update the brand, refresh it, keep the name, and then figure out how do we incorporate like a workforce development component to it? Or how do we get it to a point where it's successful and then sell it to like the employees? Right. So things like that can help really empower local communities, but at the same time, it's a win-win for us as a business, win-win for the community, and win-win for the members of that business and the stakeholders. So it's some of the things that we're thinking about.
That is a fast, I was around you during the time period, but I didn't know the whole story. One of the areas, so the audience that did not listen to Sylvia, because when Sylvia was on, she spoke about the incubator program in detail, which, as she points out, which is so true, it was the creation of her company. Without it, she would not be where she is today. And she talked about the support during the process of helping her to understand how to start the company and go through the different stages. So I want to talk a little bit about that incubator program so people understand that it's not you just gave them some space and said, here you go. You actually took them through a program. And I also, and correct me if I'm wrong, Barney, I think that there's a period of time where then Sylvia is kind of her time's up within that space, and then she goes on her own. And do you bring a new person in? I don't know. I'm making it up, but tell us all about it, Barney.
Yeah. So thankfully, because I was involved in entrepreneurship from all these different perspectives, I got to see tech, I got to see corporate entrepreneurship, academia. I understood what incubation as a model looked like in Silicon Valley. And so we said, okay, well, like, let's take this idea of what business incubation looks like and apply it in the food sector here in a small scale as a tester to see like what we can do with it. And so, opening up a restaurant is hard to begin with, right? It's a costly endeavor. It's cost an enormous amount of money to buy a space and to, refurbish it, to bring it up to code, plumbing, electrical, all that stuff. A hood in itself is super expensive. So we said, okay, well, like, first of all, we noticed that to go from like a pop-up or like an informal kitchen in your house and selling it in the farmers markets, from that to like a food truck is a huge jump. To go from that to like a storefront is a massive jump. So what's the in-between space, right? Like, what is that little lily pad that people can jump to that can help get them to the next phase? Because, the problem is that a lot of funding and finance mechanisms don't support startups because of just risk. SBA doesn't give loans to people who are startups. So you have CDFI lenders who will do that. But you need like at least 2 years. You need 1 to 2 years to be operating. And so that's what we said, okay, well, let's look at this model. What we'll do is we'll provide a build out kitchen so they don't have to worry about, building out, buying equipment and large equipment. We'll do all of that work, heavy lifting, right? We'll include that in the structure. We'll bring them in. We'll help them with their brands. We'll help them with their logos. We'll help them with their identity, the concept development, the menu design, pricing models, understanding who their customer demographics are, what the story that they're trying to tell is, essentially help them form a solid business model that they can communicate to the customer, and do it in a way that is intriguing not only to the customer but to media and to journalism and art. People get written up for exciting stuff, for food. So that was the component of the resources. So we bring them in, give them the kitchen, help them with all that stuff, connect them to capital sources so that they can get startup capital. We have some lenders that we work with that we know that they'll essentially work with you, and as long as you have a couple, like 10 months to a year popping up, they'll give you financing to help you with your storefront, and a micro loan, so less than 50,000. A lot of these people don't really need that much. They probably need like maybe 10 to 20,000 to start up here. And then we do essentially a revenue share model with them, where the more you make, the less percentage we take, because it's a shared interest, right? So it's like the better you do, the better we do, and there's like shared interest. We want to make sure they do better. And so it works out. We provide them an enormous amount of handholding. Like, we meet with them on a regular basis. We meet with them once or twice a month, formally, and then we informally meet with them almost every week and just talk about their business and how can we help. And whenever they're in a pickle, they're in a bind and a problem, like, we troubleshoot that with them and give them a different perspective and help them figure out, okay, well, like, this is the way to navigate it from this perspective, and this is your option here. We kind of work with them. We ultimately help them feel like there's someone in their corner, because as entrepreneurship can be a lonely sport.
Very lonely.
And so what we do is we let them know, like, we're here for you. And a lot of the conversations are really psychological. A lot of like, you got this, and don't worry, like, this is part of the process. This isn't unique to you. And that helps a lot of the time. It just keeps them stay focused and keep going. And so it's been a great process for us. We've been working really well. We had two concepts. One of them just left because, he got engaged and his priorities changed a little bit. He's, saving up for a wedding. And so, it's a little bit different for him. So we understood that. But Los Taqueros trucking along, and they're doing really well. And I think within a year after, they'll be within a new storefront or a food truck or something. We'll work with them to that process. And so right now we're currently working with a new concept right now. He's a chef. He's amazing, absolutely creative. But we challenge people, right? So like he came up with us with a menu, and I'm like, that's a great menu, but like, let's push it. Like, what's going to really get you noticed that's different, And so people like for us to challenge them. I remember watching the documentary on the Bulls. It was The Last Dance. And one of the coaches was like, great players deserve to be coached hard. Mm-hmm. And so I always stuck with me. And it's true. It's like, when you have a great person who has really massive potential, it's a disservice to them to like not coach them hard, to not push them to challenge themselves. And I think a lot of us forget that we were once in that position, and I could have used somebody to push me that hard. And so that's what we want to do. I want to make sure that we provide that help, because everybody could use it.
That is so true. I always would think back and think, well, I grew up hard because I grew up in a family that just kind of was really challenging. And my brother was older and always pushing me to the max. But I thank God for every bit of it, because it brought me to where I am today. And Sylvia is hoping to go into her own storefront at some point. So, what I really love about your story, Barney, having been in banking and then around investment banking for many years, I've seen a lot of the concepts, but they were never about what I kind of engaged in, this word real people. The show's about real people. I tend to be really affectionate with that term right now. And I love it because you're about real people. You're really, you're doing it yourself. You're right next to them. You're engaged. I think it's wonderful. I'm going to go on a little bit of a side jaunt for a second, Barney, on some advice that I think the audience can benefit from in many different ways. And I know that part of what you've had to do, or, have done over the years, is work with city officials, work with the permitting, work with the county, and to a degree even work with politicians, et cetera, right? And a lot of our viewers do do need to engage in these with these people on different reasons, from a permitting to try to get recognized, to try to get help. And a lot of them don't know how to approach them. They're uncomfortable in these kind of conversations. You know it, Barney. You know exactly where I'm going with this. So can we spend a few minutes talking about your involvement with the community, why companies should get involved with the community, what they should do to at least know somebody within their community, and you take it from there.
Yeah, I mean, we formed Boulevard Market as a public-private partnership, which means that we, had sort of like this informal agreement with the city of Montebello that we were going to do this here, they were going to help us, and that it was going to be a beautiful sort of marriage because it was, again, aligned interests. And the one thing I realized, so, it's funny, navigating through the bureaucracy is such a skill set that I feel like I have now.
Yeah, that's why I'm asking this question. That's exactly why I'm asking it.
So I learned this skill set when I was at Cal State Los Angeles, believe it or not. I was, the president of an entrepreneurship club, and we were always doing disruptive stuff that like we would always get in trouble for. Like we built like a hosting website, and we used to partner with the teachers to give us like all their students would host their websites on our site. We were making like $3,000 a month, and it was cash. And we got in trouble because then people started hearing about it, and they wanted it to sink their, everybody wanted their pound of flesh, so we decided to get rid of it. But I learned how to navigate bureaucracy in those environments in the university setting, and that really did transfer over to the government side because everybody's got their bosses, everybody's got their own vested interest in things. And the one thing I realized in government is that nobody has any vision. They're just not creative people, generally speaking. Not everyone, right? Some people have really tremendous vision, but for the most part, most of them are just they're administrators, which is govern. They know how to govern. They're policy driven and they're code driven, and so very very linear thinking. And so they don't necessarily know what's great for them or not good for them. And so it was important for us to sort of like build that relationship with them to help them understand the bigger picture of what we were working on. Not because if I could think of Boulevard Market, I thought of it as a long-term investment in the area, not as a transaction, right? And so it was important for us to build relationships with the city council. Because you need city council. You need at least 3 people on your side to, or majority, however size your council is. You need a majority vote. And so it's important for you to build relationships with your council members, because if you need help, if you need any kind of like champions on the inside pushing for you on the behalf of small business, you have to build those relationships. One thing I realized when it comes to that is, you have to understand that people do things. Council members, not all of them, but a lot of them do things are based on how it's going to help me get elected next season.
Yeah.
Right. And so it's an unfortunate truth. But if you're someone that can understand what motivates them and what's their sort of incentive, all you have to do is figure out how to align your business and yourself with their incentives. And then your interests are aligned. And now you can sort of work together on something bigger. I trust people based on aligned interests, and a lot of times because, sometimes government council, they'll go their own way without even ever discussing or talking, or, they'll screw up a lot of stuff because they have their own interests. And so, sometimes it's important to build such great relationships with them because you want to know what's coming on the horizon. You want to know if they're like deciding to change the code on your block. They're changing zoning. They're going to put in a farmer's market, and it's not going to be near you. They're going to put it like 3 blocks down the road, or, whatever, something that's going to impact you. You should know about that because it does impact your business. And so the better the relationship, the more deeper you can go, the more value you can create for the city, the more value they can create for you. And it's a symbiotic relationship. And a lot of times it's a necessary evil in a lot of times, because trust me, there's times where I'll get text messages from council members. Oh, I saw you talking to this person, what's that about? And it's like high school, right? And I have to deal with that nonsense. we've had situations arise at our business where there's been arguments and people get, it's a weird dynamic. And I wish I didn't have to deal with it, but you have to. In order to be a beacon in the community and do anything transformative, you need the help of government. Now, because of all the relations we've built, I feel very confident knowing that we can build another project here and they can fast track it for us. They'll help us do with it. They know the quality that we can build, what we can do and why we would do it. And they take our opinion very serious. Like, they ask us for our opinion on like economic development questions. They ask us for our opinion on like investment things they want to do in the downtown. We collaborate on a lot of stuff, I want to bring certain things next year and we're working on it together. We're working on grants together. And so that type of stuff it's such a symbiotic relationship now, but it takes a lot of time to build that trust. And so it's important. It really is important.
I'm so glad you spoke on that, Barney, and it reminds me of so many different things, and it brings up many points for the audience. And growing up in the country, you grow up with a different mentality. I wasn't really familiar with the fact that you don't always say exactly how you feel. If you think something's stupid in the country, you just go, well, that's friggin' stupid. That was how I grew up, right? And I remember when I first started in business in my 20s, I would sit in rooms, I was really fortunate to kind of, be fast tracked when I was in my early 20s, and I would observe others and I would recognize that there was a certain way to act within certain situations. I guess we're talking about emotional intelligence is what we're saying. And then I realized that you can always be true to who you are, but at the same time, you have to understand, and not to say a cliche term, but how to play the game. You have to understand how to play the game. And success is about remaining who you are. You don't want to lose that, but having a great consciousness and awareness of what's going on, and your alignment with goals is so true. And over the years, I've gotten involved with different situations with politicians and gave speeches beforehand for business because they used it as a way to bring people to the crowd, etc. And once I started realizing, as you speak of, they're wanting to get elected and I want this, how can I align it? And so the message that I, hope the audience got, and what I'm trying to reiterate, is if you really do understand what somebody's trying to achieve, and unless it's something completely outrageous, I'm not wanting to, go without stating that, but don't place judgment upon it, just more get in alignment. And it reminds me, you're too young to know this, but there was that song, you got the roller skate, I got the key. It always reminds me of that old song. I don't even know who sings it because it was before my time a bit. But I think the intelligence of getting an understanding of a scenario and figuring out where you can align your goals and other goals is so key. And I like what you said too about having a relationship, or at least knowledge of who the governing body in your area is, so important, because they are making decisions that are going to impact you. And so if you're, and I just watched something just recently, and it was on, politicians in general, and it doesn't even matter what side of the aisle it was on. It was just saying that we have a civic duty to voice our opinion. And if we, and I think that's really important from there. So we're getting kind of near the end. I'm going to ask you just some generic questions. These are the tricky ones, Barney, but they're not going to be for you. If you were to identify, you've been around a lot of entrepreneurs, you've seen a lot. What are the qualities that you find, and they're not qualities like you have to be born with, but what do you find that entrepreneurs do think, whatever where you want to go, the top things that allow them to succeed?
Resilience is a big one. Mental toughness. Yeah, I mean, this game is a tough one to play because, as we said, it's a lonely one. Everyone has an opinion about what you should be doing, right? And so, the people who succeed, I've noticed, are the ones that are the most mentally tough, the most resilient, and the ones that, I hate to say this, but, and I don't mean this in like a literal way, but they have this attitude of like, I don't care what I need to do, I'm going to try to make it work. Like it's I don't even know I'm sure there's a word for it, I can't think of it right now, but there's this like, I can make it happen. and they usually do, and they'll come up with some creative, weird, half-ass way to kind of like make it happen. And someone said radical in the chat. That might be the word. They're radical thinkers in that way. But
you know what my mother used to say to me when I was a kid, but she was actually not meaning it to be positive. She used to tell me I had more guts than brains.
But that's what it takes a lot of times, right? Like in this game, a lot of times it's like you just have to have this weird self-belief in yourself.
Yeah.
That is like they said that Steve Jobs used to have this thing. It was like a reality disruptor power that he had, that he would just make you suspend belief and disrupt it and make you think you can do it. And so you almost have to do that for yourself on a regular basis. You have to have this crazy belief that you can make something happen. And even if there's everything is showing you the contrary, like you just have to go for it and be mentally resilient and tough in the process. Most of this game is mental. I can't tell you how many times most entrepreneurs I know don't have the answer. They just don't know something a lot of times, but they just, I'll make it work, I'll make it happen, I'll figure it out, and then they go and YouTube videos on how to take a chassis apart, or they do something.
I was sharing with Barney at the end, me and my craziness, I decided I could pull out the Jeep seat, the seats in my Jeep, and replace them. And I watched a YouTube, and I was telling him that crazy, because I have this, I'm going to do it. I don't know what it's going to do to me to do it, but I'm going to do it. I always say I've got brains, I've got this, I got guts, I'll do it. And you're so right, because you get knocked down. And I feel like it's just like anything, most of the time I feel like I'm actually failing when I succeed. It's like during the process I feel like I'm failing, but in the end I succeed, but I always feel like I'm failing. And I just keep pushing, like, oh no, and then all of a sudden I succeed.
Yeah, and that's a weird thing. I think I experienced that too. In every step of the way, you're like, man, I don't know.
I don't know.
Yeah. But you have to kind of keep it together and make sure you at least get to the end. And so I think, I think those are the things that I've seen across the board from people is once you understand that, it's all part of the entrepreneurial journey, even the success and the failure too, right? Like the failure is part of it as well. And so I think once you're on that journey, it's all dependent on you just pushing through and being resilient in the process, honestly.
I like the word resiliency. And also I think it's a facing the facts when you don't like them. I remember being, in this company, a private company I was consulting with, and they were having financial problems, and I brought it up, and they didn't want to believe it, type thing. And then the partners argued for like forever, and I just sat back and watched. And then, they got done arguing. There were a couple, and the wife was crying, and all this stuff was done, right? And when they finally calmed down, it was one of my famous lines. I said, I just looked at him and I said, nothing in my experience has ever come out of delusional ignorance. But now that we know, we can do something about it. So I think when things aren't going well, the numbers aren't showing success, sometimes people just want to bury their head and work harder. And it's a matter of facing what isn't working and changing it. And you can change it, but you first must face it. Do you note that a bit too?
100%. It's about being honest with yourself. And I think the problem is a lot of people don't want to hear, and they don't want to see themselves as anything less than. I can't even tell you, this thing has made me such an honest person being an entrepreneur, because it reminds me how little I know. On a regular basis reminds me how little I know. And that's okay, because I'm okay with looking at the abyss and saying, okay, there's something here that I need to fix, and identifying what that is, and then just trying to address it. But if you're just saying there's nothing there, well, then you're, like you said, putting your head in the sand, and that's a bad thing always for entrepreneurs. Like I said, as long as I know, that's what I always tell people. I just need to know what the problem is, or who type person I'm dealing with, and then I can always work around that. I can work with that.
Yeah,
you know?
me too. I always say that I'm afraid of being afraid. So when I'm afraid, I got to jump in and conquer it because I'm literally afraid of the emotion of afraid. But if I jump in and I start conquering it, the minute I become engaged in it, I'm no longer afraid of it because I'm taking an action towards it. By the way, I wanted to let you know the chat is going crazy. There is so many wonderful words. Thank you to Richard. Melanie Brand is the new key. I did not know the composer of that song. So thank you to Richard. I mean, we could have in this chat, we could publish this as words of wisdom from an entrepreneurship guidance book because so many written such great things. So with our time, I want to make sure everybody has an ability, if you want to give out any information, to get in touch with you. People, there's a Kin that says that she has a wine company from a local company. She wants to speak to you about maybe being a distributor. Other people want to get in touch with you. So I think Lauren maybe had your information. I'm not sure. So Lauren, I'm going to invite you to come back, close out the show, and let's make sure anybody that wants to get in touch with Barney has the ways that they can at least become familiar with Boulevard Market. So Barney, you let Lauren know what she needs to know.
Yeah, I mean, as long as you can reach me through Instagram at Barney. So Instagram.com/Barney Santos is it's real easy. It's my name, Barney Santos, BARNYSANTOS. Or you can email me at hola HOLA at Gentefy, so GENTEFY.com. I'll put it in the chat. Actually, I can just type it in there now.
And also I want to do a shout out that Barney, like myself, is also an advisor at the Pasadena SBDC. Shout out to Annie that we have Barney on our team at Pasadena SBDC. Go Pasadena. So I have to do a shout out. I know I have contracts for all other centers too, so I don't want to not mention that they're great, but we had to have a big shout out to Pasadena. Barney, you know what? It was worth the wait to get you on the show.
Thank you for being patient. I appreciate it.
Interesting, Barney, because I had a belief that you were going to come on the show and it was going to be great. And there was going to be so much, but I had no idea to the degree of how great the show was going to be. I'm just engaged in it, but I feel as though our conversation and the information and the inspiration that you shared with us today has been phenomenal. So thank you so much. And Barney, I know you're going to go off to be great success. I am going to get Annie to track you down and get you back on this show again, so you can share any updates what you're getting involved with. So with that, Lauren, I'm going to let you out. And thank you to Richard, by the way, who said it was a great show every single week. Thank you, Richard. I did catch it. I don't catch everything in the chat because it goes kind of fast, but I do catch a few. Thank you so much. And a reminder to everybody, we're going to be dark next week, but we will be back. So I should say before we go, I want everybody to have a wonderful Thanksgiving, enjoy family and friends and feast and relaxation and everything about being a spiritual human being on planet Earth. Enjoy being just present and experiencing life. That's my happy Thanksgiving to you. And I will see you the following week. And we're going to talk about marketing strategy. We're going to get into the details. So Lauren, I'll let you close it down after that.
Thank you so much, Lori. Barney, it's my first time working with you, but it's been an absolute pleasure. I did want to mention really quickly, like some of the key words that have come out of the audience today. Radical was one. Then we've got faith. Failure is part of the process. Tons of people saying how much they loved it and enjoyed it. Like it was just super insightful and candid and authentic. And it really resonated with everyone, even myself. So thank you so much. It's been a pleasure.
Oh, it's my pleasure. Thank you so much for having me.
Okay, bye everybody. See you next week on Small Biz Talk.
Bye, Lori. Thank you. Bye, Barney.
Bye,
for those of you who are still on, you can review the recording on our YouTube playlist. I will drop that into the chat once again. And then, if you'd like to get in contact with Barney, he left his email address. Let me see if I can put that in there for you guys again too. It's the Hola Gentefy. So there it is. Hola Gente is in there. And then let me drop the YouTube playlist link one more time because I know a ton of you want to review our past shows. There it is for you. So again, thank you so much. We are dark next week, so we will not see you next week. Have a very happy and wonderful Thanksgiving, and then we will see you again the following week. So take care. Happy Thanksgiving. Enjoy your family and all the great food. Bye.